Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazal Ministries podcast.
Okay, campers, rise and shine. And don't forget to put your hoodies on, because it's cold out there today. What's up, you geeks? Welcome back to Systematic Geekology. It is early February, which means it is time, once again, for a yearly tradition around these parts. Do not change that dial. If you are experiencing a little bit of deja vu, that is simply because it is once again Groundhog's Day. So it is a bit of a tradition around here to talk about the seminal movie of the occasion, and who better to join me to talk about this timeless classic than the man himself, joined by Evan. What's up, dude?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about this Bill Murray classic. Fantastic flick. It's a perfect time of year. Yeah. How are you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's funny you mention, that time of year. It makes me think of the quote from the movie. You want a prediction about the weather? You're asking the wrong Phil. I'll give you a winter prediction. It's going to be cold. It's going to be gray, and it's going to last you for the rest of your life. Yeah,
Bang.
This is one of those movies that was just kind of always there in like growing up. You know what I mean? Like I remember I grew up right down the street from an indie video store, and I would go in there on a regular basis. And I remember seeing this case, and so went there and watched it from a really young age. And it's that I remember being fascinated by this movie because of the premise, and it's always entertaining to me to see what the opinions are of this movie and fan theories to try and explain it and all that jazz. But we'll get to all of that. What is your history with this movie?
History with this movie is it is a really wide range. I had never seen it until the research for this show, for this episode, for this recording. But I felt like I had when I saw it, because there were so many memes, there's so many quotable lines, but that being said, I've been wanting to see the film because I love Bill Murray and Dan. No, not Dan Aykroyd. The director. What's his name? From Ghostbusters, also Venkman. Yeah. But I also, our daughter, she was born on Groundhog's Day. That's her birthday. So I was like, man, I got to watch this movie now. It's crazy. And
Harold is the
Harold Ramis. There we go. Perfect. Yeah. And So her sweet, she wants a quinceañera. So I was thinking about hitting him up or something, be like, "Hey, Bill, we are big fans over here, and we would like you to show up to her party." And I think he might show up.
There are some stories of people like celebrities getting those kinds of invites and just showing up,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
always funny to me. Yeah, so I should throw in this movie is especially resonant for my neck of the woods because I grew up a couple hours outside of Punxsutawney.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it was like a big thing, whether or not the oversized rat actually saw his shadow and all of that. Um, but yeah, so it's funny to me. You have a premise like this, and it's so rife in a YouTube world, in a fan theory world of all of these different takes on the movie. So before we get into any of the ridiculousness that has been posited about explaining this movie, you watched it for the first time for the show. What'd you think?
I loved it. I was not expecting the uh, the the sci-fi of it all and
Yeah.
how they leaned into it. It was almost like a episode of Black Mirror. I was like, all right. So or like Twilight Zone, like, and I knew that I would like the movie of because of its legacy, but I respected the film when I was done with it, mainly because of its ending. But yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I went back and watched it again because it'd been years since I'd seen it last, and there's a lot of it that holds up. Some of it I'm a little I've grown out of, but there's this style of 80s 90s comedy that is
Yes.
just it's what I was raised on. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's I'm right in that right um that right demo. And the so I'm watching this movie and the DJ hits like that opening line of the movie. Okay, campers, rise and shine, and don't forget to put your booties on because it's cold out there today. And it immediately took me back to being a kid and
Oh
the
yeah.
like the first time of watching this movie. It is interesting how willing they were to mix the worlds of comedy and sci-fi, because I feel like nowadays sci-fi is always presented
Completely
as
different.
drama, and so this is just a different take of like there are dramatic moments, there are serious subject matter
Hmm.
that are handled in this movie, but the whole thing is presented largely through the lens of comedy.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree, and that's what I when I was watching it, I was like, oh, so this is the other sci-fi comedy movie that's not Ghostbusters. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. But and one of the things that I think, I don't know if it's just because of um, the nostalgia of it all for me, but the quotes are just endless from this overall. Like,
hundred
do you
percent.
ever have deja vu, Mrs. Lancaster? I don't think so, but I could check with the kitchen if you like. Like, come on, like it's all just presented with such
Just
trying to take
there.
it so just that, yeah. So it's funny that a movie like this. I just don't think a movie like this gets made in 2025. Though I say that, and I don't. I in researching for this movie, I cannot tell you whether or not this is actually legitimate or not, or this is
Hmm.
just somebody who created a fan video or whatever. But apparently, there's going to be a sequel to it in that's supposed to be coming out this year. I don't know. I cannot
Okay.
substantiate whether or
All
not
right.
that's actually legitimate or not. I certainly hope not, because I think that's a trend that needs to go the way of the dodo. That we need to stop making legacy sequels to these movies.
However, the title Groundhog Day has a ring to it.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like if they are going to do it, it's got to be something like that.
Yeah, yeah. But like you were saying, with that comedy there and that edge that it had, and I don't know how we do. I'm assuming the listeners have seen the movie and stuff, and we are going to spoil it. But when the character changes, when the character of Bill Murrayfield changes, I love that his character he was still witty, and that comedy was still there, but he was applying it differently. That was huge to me because at first it's just that like snarky kind of postmodern cynicism, and 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 that was expected. It's like, oh, okay, it's the 90s and stuff like that. But then when he makes the turn and that's still there, I was like, that was a nice touch. Like, he didn't completely get saved or have it come to Jesus moment, and he completely changes, he is a new creation. No, he's just has a different outlook on life, and he's still the same person. And I forgot what joke it was, the one where they're dancing in the party, and I was just cracking up. But I really like that his humor survived after his little turn. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate a good, solid, dark comedy, and the fact that that tone remains as you're going through the character progression of Phil, as he's going through and realizing he's in a time loop, and he's, getting everything, he's trying to get everything that he wants, and then realizes there's a certain level of futility to it all. And then you start to get the montage of
Yeah.
all of the different ways that he unalives himself, and he kidnaps the groundhog and has him in the truck with him and the whole nine yards. Like, but the whole time he's still like cracking jokes, and there's a level of humanity to this movie that takes you on an emotional ride of character development that maintains
Mm-hmm.
the entire way and doesn't end in a hallmark everybody is all sunshine and rainbows. Like, yes, eventually he makes it out where he hits the day after Groundhog Day, but it's not that everything is, all of a sudden better. It's that he has gone through a maturation process and
Uh-huh.
has
Yep.
become a more mature person by way of this entire arc that he's been on throughout the entire movie.
Yeah. And that arc, I was like, oh man, how far are they going to take this? But when the film finished, I was like, oh great, like I really did like it, and it wasn't cheesy to me how they left it. It felt so natural. The a producer girlfriend was a very she was interesting because she had an arc, but it was played through the different versions of herself in the different days that he did that. And I think that last one was a culmination of everything, and that was a pretty sweet little touch there.
I think for as much as, obviously Bill Murray's the star of this movie, but I think for as much as you talk about Bill Murray, you have to talk about Andy McDowell, Rita, the love interest.
Rita. Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's she's one of those actresses that if you grew up a cinephile in the 90s,
Oh man. Bing.
you know what I mean?
There she
Yeah,
is.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that it's her. You know what I mean? Same
Mm-hmm.
thing with the other on air person, Larry, the Chris
Oh
Elliott.
yes.
He's another guy that's been in like
Oh,
everything.
the one that surprised me, and I was so excited to see him was Stephen Tobolowsky. I love him, and he had no idea he was in this, and he's in that classic role of like that side character that he plays so well. So it was great.
Yeah, I think there's a certain charm to movies of this era where because not everything what had to be a $1 billion,
Mm-hmm.
tentpole movie that's got to break the box
Yeah.
office charts and all of this stuff, and you could make smaller movies. Now, this movie happens to be one that like lives on and all of that because it is around a holiday. But even in comparative size and scale to other movies of its time, it's not like this is breaking box office records and all of that jazz, but it still has an opportunity to be more of an artistic flick. And that's where, some of these, like Stephen Tobolowsky, obviously Bill Murray, they would find their roles in
Mm-hmm.
larger productions along the way. But a lot of the individual faces where you look at them and you're like, oh, hey, it's him. Oh, hey, it's her. The reason why you know that is because of smaller films that came out
Yeah.
more frequently. And so these actors and actresses have a million credits to their name if you look them up on IMDb, because there were so many of these sorts of movies coming out that you couldn't help but know them if you grew up watching movies or even TV shows at this time.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Um, who was the cameraman's name again?
The cameraman's name was Chris Elliott, Larry.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. He was one of those guys that he played that role, and he plays it a lot. I think of you think he's a simple man, but he's more complex as you get to know the character more. And and I liked his some of his moments in this.
Yeah, I mean, going through the list of the cast members, even down to like the piano teacher, the one of the police officers, even one of the men. He's just
The
credited as
mayor.
man. Yeah, the mayor as well. Like there are so many people from major roles to minor roles that you go through, and it's like, oh hey, it's them. Oh hey, it's her. Oh hey, it's him. You know.
I didn't look it up, but at the end, like at the party, was it at the party or was it at the hotel? But he lights a lady's cigarette that looked like the wife from A Christmas Vacation. I was like, wait a minute, is that her? I couldn't tell.
I'm not sure, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's there. It's so funny when you look back and see the who's who that end up in these movies over time. So here's a question: before we get into some of the ridiculous takes and some of the explanations that
Should be
people have
fun.
tried to give to this movie, what do you think the explanation is? Have you developed some kind of theory that explains him being caught in a time loop and eventually coming out the other side of
The first thing I thought of was this is probably a Job kind of tale, like from the story of Job, and this is God trying to teach him a lesson or trying to prove a point, and that's about as far as I went. But there were different points where I'm like, oh, I'm sure there's a bunch of fan theories about this and that, and like the one for me was, hey, what about if the Stephen Tobolowsky character, he's in the same loop, but just different? And I was like, oh, okay. And then I did not take that anywhere, but I thought that would be cool. But yes, I can see how there's a plethora of the fan theories out there.
Yeah. So the most wild one that I got to when I was younger was that Stephen Tobolowsky's character, that
Okay.
Ned is the mastermind. That Ned is like some cosmic force, or Ned is God, or Ned is whatever's pulling the strings on this whole thing. And like the measure of Bill Murray's character progression is measured by Ned in how he interacts with him, and all of that. That was as wild as I got. So yeah, there the most prominent one for this one is that Phil is actually dead. Like the whole time he's actually dead, and he's going through purgatory. That he's basically stuck in purgatory, and he has to finally make right with who he is, and make right with the universe and all of this jazz. That just that then he breaks the loop and he can finally ascend to heaven by the time the whole thing is said and done. That's probably the most famous one posited. It's either by Screen Junkies or Watch Mojo, or one of those. Right. No, I think it's What Culture were the ones that put that one forward. Yeah. The other one is that he's actually not the one that's stuck in the time loop. That it's Rita who's stuck in the time loop, but she doesn't know
I like
it.
That.
And that he's just subject to her coming around to him, and that she is low key the central figure in the whole.
Cool. That's fun. And one of the things that I respected of it is that there was no post-credit sequence of some guy at a keyboard or something, like that he was the master coder for this whole thing. It's like they just left it ambiguous, and I think that added to the value of it because people like to find those kind of answers, and they like to make up a canon, and they like to connect the dots, and this film let the people do that without being too over the top about it.
Yeah, it's funny because growing up in the Northeast, it was always about for people who aren't in Punxsutawney, and even for people in that town, it is it's a town. It used to be a town celebration and be a big deal and all that kind of stuff. But really, the people in Pennsylvania are some of the people that will take it the least seriously, and be the most outspoken about how stupid that tradition is of an oversized rat predicting the weather. And so getting to see the groundhog get got by Bill Murray was half the fun of this movie. But yeah, so it's there's everything from this being a metaphor for psychoanalysis, this being a metaphor for purgatory, this being a metaphor. I took the most ridiculous one that I saw was this is a metaphor for Judaism. That one was fascinating.
All right.
But it's I think for me, and in thinking about this movie, I think any one of those trying to compare it to some kind of religious allegory falls short on actually looking at the character progression and the emotionalism of the movie. Like, I, part of why I wouldn't want to see a sequel take place is I don't want them to try and explain it. I think it sits
Right.
fine
Same.
at some cosmic level where, some cosmic force saw that Bill Murray needed to grow as an individual. And so he stuck him inside of a time loop where he needed to grow and become something different and mature and just leave it there. You know what I mean? And have a satisfying character arc that is very human in nature, and some cosmic questions are better left unexplored.
Yeah, and that's where the respect came from for me, because I completely agree that I would hate to see the sequel and they have a reference to the Phil project or something. It's like, oh, come on, man. It's like,
Hi, my name is TJ. I'm here to tell you about the Systematic Geekology shop. That's where we post all of our merch. It is hosted on Creator Spring, and we have a ton of really cool merch, mostly clothing. We have hats, extra soft t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies, and more. Our hosts wear them all the time. It's actually super comfy. We have glassware, mugs, which everybody loves a good mug. Fill out your cupboard. Get rid of some old ones, which is the part that I never do. That's why I have too many cups. We have cloth bags, posters, and it's really stuff we like to put our icons on there. We like to put quotes, things we come up with, and it's cool. It's a cool way, and a lot of it is pretty subtle too, to show support for one of your favorite shows. And my personal favorite is actually our SG dad cap, which I haven't been reluctant to buy it because now I have to wear hats at work and then I get tired of wearing hats. But it's really cool. It's really understated. It is our logo right here. And then it says Systematic Geekology on the back. It's great. It's a really good hat. We have a few of them floating around. Check it out. And if we could all just rock the SG dad cap in public, I think that'd be pretty sweet.
One of the few fan theories that I'm fascinated I never saw was that really the Groundhog's behind the whole thing. That it's Punxsutawney Phil is the mastermind behind the entirety of the thing. I'm like, what? That seems like a layup. Like, blame the Groundhog. You know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those. I think the value of this movie sits in appreciating it for what it was at the time. Like, I think this is a movie that if you grew up and you are of the particular vintage that guys like us are, this is like straight down the middle. This is 80s, 90s comedy, and yeah, it's risque. Yeah, it's dark humor. Yeah, it's dark comedy. That's half the fun, y'all. Like, this is one of those things you gotta be. If you've never watched Groundhog and you're listening to Systematic Ecology and you're asking yourself the question, should I watch this movie? You gotta have a sense of humor to watch this movie. You just do. You
Big
gotta
time.
be willing to accept the fact that, like, not everything is made for kids, and that's okay. Maybe don't watch this with all the little geeks out there. You know what I mean? There is probably an age limit on how young you want to go in watching these things, because you may end up in an awkward situation of trying to explain some scenes and all of that. But outside of that, I think there's something beautiful to the fact that, like, we see the ridiculousness get ratcheted up and ratcheted up and ratcheted up in these big elaborate scenes and all of that, but the most touching is when it just gets the most mundane. They just spend the night talking and throwing cards into a hat, and
That was
it's
huge.
not
Yeah.
overly complex. It's just two people connecting. And that, to me, is where you have, like, an entire era of movies where A, I don't think that this one gets made in 2025 for the simple fact that like this is not politically correct in all facets of the word. It
Sure.
just isn't. But also it's not bombastic. It's not feel good. It's not everybody, it's not Hallmark by the end of the whole thing. And I think there's a beauty in that era of movie that's captured when watching something like this.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that it just let them have their moments, it's like it felt so natural. And I'm glad
Yeah.
that it kind of was a Hallmark ending, but it wasn't at the same time like it didn't feel forced. It didn't feel forced. So um, there was a point I was going to make, but I forgot it. If I remember, I'll bring it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you pick a happy ending, but to me, happy ending and a Hallmark ending are two different things
Yeah.
because it like you said, so nothing's forced, and I think that's why you have a movie like this where we could sit here and do and if you're going to do this thing again next year, have a top five fan theories about this movie. But I think this is a love letter. If there's one, I think with a movie like this, you almost have to find a different angle every single time that you talk about a movie like this.
Right.
And that's
You
the
would have to get
power
real
of,
creative.
yeah, I think there's a power to the fact that you can approach it from different angles. You can peel back different layers. You can hit this from different theories because it just lets it sit in the ambiguity. It just lets it sit out there in the ethos of not explaining every single solitary thing. And to me, this sits as a love letter to a bygone era of movie making. If there was any one thing that I pull out from this, it's appreciating the continuous evolution of man. The fact that we don't need to have a nice buttoned up
Mm-hmm.
thing. That's not humanity. That's not humanity if you're a Christian. That's not humanity if you're a non-Christian. It doesn't matter what angle you're hitting this
Mm-hmm.
from. We don't need an over religiousized answer to the problem of Groundhog Day. I think we can just appreciate the enduring nature that humans go through processes and evolve into something new, and that can be okay. And we can appreciate something that is a bit more risque, that does make some crude jokes and have some crude humor, and accept the fact that, yeah, this lived at a different time. No, it's not like overtly in these different disrespectful directions, and we can just appreciate a movie from a different era.
Right. Right. And let it be. But I think when you think of a sequel, or I'm trying to think of kind of similar movies that have kind of this trope with the relationship and a like weird quirky sci-fi ness to them. And the two that come to mind is 51st Dates. That one kind of works. It's got that like, oh, we got to keep doing it. And then I haven't seen it since it came out. So pardon me if this is a junior, a preschool connection, but Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh yeah,
That came to mind, and I was like, if they made a sequel in those kind of veins, I think that would still work and provide that link to what you're saying of a filmmaking of the past that is that we just don't have anymore, but still be valid for it, for the newer generations or the newer audiences. um, or or I could see it. I could see it being trying to keep that specialness, but maybe take one of those fan theories and kind of fly with it, because I think that would be cool. But you're right; it is a film that that once you see it, once I saw it, I love the whole film grain to it all. And I like that the whole film, it probably was on purpose, but the whole film was overcast. There weren't any shadows. There was no bright lights. Just, it was all flat image until the very end. I said, all right, touche. I see what you're doing there.
Yeah, I definitely agree that I think you get the most out of a movie like this by watching it on like a CRT, like an old and sort of like film grain to it. I think is really one of the more endearing aspects of watching a movie that is this kind of age. So I looked it up, and apparently we are getting a sequel that's supposed to release this year, and it's his kid
Whoa.
that's going through a time loop. So maybe next year, when it comes time for Groundhog Day, you'll be talking about the sequel. I am in no way, shape, or form interested in that, but that's okay. Not every movie is for every person. So,
and is his son going to be played by Adam Driver? Probably.
Right. Yeah. Probably. So closing thoughts. What final thoughts do you have about the movie and all that?
My final thoughts are: I'm glad I finally saw it. It was one of those blind spots. I loved how it started, and I love its execution, and that the ending, it wasn't forced. It was kind of expected, but I did appreciate it, and the showcasing that humans have different layers, and the possibility to grow through processes like this. I love that, and that was a big takeaway from it.
Yeah, I can see how, if you didn't grow up with this movie, your mileage may vary on whether or not you are necessarily super forgiving of this particular movie. But I think if you can either see past or come to appreciate the 80s, 90s era of jokes and all of that sort of jazz, I think this is a really good story of the human spirit, and the fact that humans can change, and that humans can shift regardless of situation and circumstance. They can grow as individuals. So that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. So we didn't start it off with this, so we'll go ahead and end it with this. We usually start off with what you're geeking out on. So what are you geeking out on, and what recommendations do you have for the listeners?
What I'm geeking out on is we're still watching, we're still binging through Hell's Kitchen, and those are fun. This season that we're on, I think it's season 21. Man, it's like, I don't know, I don't know where they got all these chefs, but they got some crazy personalities, and it makes for a great show. Okay.
So, mini rant, and this is what you guys tune in for. This is what you got. This is why you stayed to the end of the episode, so that way you can hear the geeks pop off about things. If you haven't heard about my thoughts of being the chef, go back Thanksgiving Day episode, the bear, catch up. You'll figure it out real quick. Okay, so Hell's Kitchen. I auditioned to be on Hell's Kitchen when I was a young chef, and I tried to punch Gordon Ramsay in the face. I did. I tried to punch him in the face. He's such a prick. Just such a Yeah, he's such I understand that it's that personality, but at that point in time, I could not deal with even him playing the role and being that level of a prick in front of like that
Oh
show
man.
is so aggravating to me at some point. And I bring it up because my wife and I are watching through season 20 of Hell's Kitchen, the Young
Okay.
Guns season. That's actually it's fascinating that you brought that up. So what am I geeking out
Yeah.
on? Hell's Kitchen as well.
Oh,
And
right
that
on.
Oh, it's so triggering though, because there's so many bad habits. Like you're gonna sit there and scream at people in the middle of dinner service, and you have a whole generation of chefs who watch Hell's Kitchen and feel vindicated by that dude's piss poor behavior inside the kitchen. It's so annoying. But yeah,
And they
it's
think
such
that's the way that should be. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah. So it's if you can turn your brain off, and if you're not a byproduct of the restaurant business, then I would say go ahead and watch it because it's ridiculous. It is absolutely like they very clearly want to have the most outlandish personalities win out the day. It's not
Yes.
nearly as much about skill as it is personality and things like that.
Right.
But
It's real world.
yeah, it's real world. It's real world, except for chefs, and you get a bunch of people together that have egos like chefs have egos. That's bound to
Yeah.
be a powder keg, and that's why the show's been around for 25 years or something ridiculous like that. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Yeah, Gordon Ramsay's a prick. So that's my geeking out on is Hell's Kitchen, and my recommendations would be watch it if that's your bag for drama TV and all of that sort of jazz. It's ridiculous. So with that, geeks, this is another one in the books. If you enjoyed listening to us, if you enjoyed that little snack size portion of Restaurant Talk, go back in the feed, watch the Bear episode. That thing is Chef's
The
Kiss,
Bear.
a work of art. We had a lot of fun, joined by Pang and Will as well. If you listened to all of this and you enjoyed what you heard and you said, you know what, I want to help those geeks keep the lights on, you can head on over to patreon.com/Anazal Ministries, I think, and go ahead and kick a couple of bucks in the kitty, help keep the lights on, and support shows like this. That is what helps independent creators keep doing what they do and keep churning out awesome content for you all. But until next time, geeks, remember, we are a chosen people, a geekdom of priests.
Peace out.
If you'd like to support our show, please consider joining our Patreon, where you get live access to our YouTube exclusives, including our comic book catch-up, manga mustard, drinks with Tejas, and our companion series that we do each year with our annual theme. You can also get exclusive merch, including t-shirts, handbags, a coffee mug, and a long sleeve shirt. We also have available bonus extra questions at the end of most of our podcast episodes. You get access to exclusive Discord channels, discounts on our store, access to any future online D&D campaigns. You get to vote on topics for some of our episodes. You can easily access all of the Patreon content right through Spotify now. So super easy. Go to our Spotify page at the top. It's going to say exclusive content for subscribers. If you're a patron, hit that button. You get all of our bonus content right there on Spotify, right with your regular feed. And of course, you get the satisfaction of knowing you helped a podcast in need. Our overhead includes editing software, marketing equipment, recording software, and a lot more. And there's a lot that goes into keeping the lights on here. And we really appreciate all of our patron subscribers for helping this show happen.
Hello, friends. If you like Systematic Geekology, then there's a host of other podcasts in our network that we think you will like just as much. And so we're part of the Anazal Ministry Podcast Network. And we hope that you can hop over and subscribe with all the podcasts that are on our network. Like, for instance, The Homily, which is, hey, Pastor Will Rose's sermon here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church. You have another podcast called The Whole Church Podcast, the OG, the originals, the beginner of it all. Yes, Joshua Noel and TJ working for unity among the church and having great conversations with the wide spectrum of those who are involved in Christian ministry and the church. You have My Seminary Life by Brandon Knight, who's discussing what he's learning in seminary, he is learning his theological studies and bringing to the surface those big things that we're wrestling with and thinking through theologically in the church and beyond. There's the Let Nothing Move You podcast from Christian Ashley, who is walking through the Bible in a very Bible study type fashion and walking through the biblical narrative. You have Dummy for Theology. I don't think Joshua is a dummy, but hey, he's going to lift up theological themes that he's thinking about and wrestling with. And maybe there's not a lot of answers, but there's definitely a lot of great questions out there that he's lifting up with some great theologians across the whole spectrum of Christianity. And then there's the Bible After Hours. Man, if you like to get risky, if you like to get controversial, there's this foul-mouthed preacher who goes through the Bible from a more progressive point of view, challenging the status quo of the modern church. Yeah, you don't want any kids around with that podcast. And then you have the Clydes, one of my favorite couples that I like to listen to. One of the hosts here on Systematic Geekology, Taylor and Elizabeth Clyde, go through weekly discussions and a kind of a devotional, conversational method of what's going on in their lives, where they see God moving in their lives, and what God is up to in the world. So those are the podcasts, a part of the AMP network. Subscribe, follow. We hope you can be a part of all that great network with the wonderful podcasts at AMP.